So with the new update on AC Evo, which is on beta, weird, we have been given new cars and tracks, and one of them is the BMW M4 GT3. And that car is also on other racing sims that I have. Sadly, I don't have iRacing. But anyway, let's test this car on these 4 games and see how they stack up to the new kid on the block. We'll begin with game number 1, and that is Le Mans Ultimate. Oh, and by the way, I will be running this test on the default setups with some tweaking on traction control and ABS to just suit more me, and with 10 laps of fuel and doing 5 laps to try and put in the fastest lap. And I will be doing this test on 2 tracks that are on all 4 of these games, and that is Imola and Spa. And as we begin with LMU, in Imola, I was able to put in a lap time of 1 minute 46.3, and in Spa, a 2 minute 23.5. Now, the standout in LMU is the force feedback. It is strong, consistent, and very communicative. The game translates the car movement into your hands really well. You feel the suspension, the tires, and the weight transfer. You can actually make sense of the car approaching its limits, which builds on your confidence to push further. As the laps go by, the tires begin to rubber in and heat up, giving you more grip. At the same time, your car gets lighter with fuel burning, and this tempts you to brake later, carry more speed through the corners, and really lean into the car's capabilities. But you have to be careful to not overstep, as the game will punish you. With lower traction control, you can really dance with the car. You can use the throttle to rotate the car by using the torque to slide the rear just enough, and combine that with trail braking, you can gain extra front rotation on turn-in, making the drive even more rewarding. But you can't rely on ABS carelessly. It won't do all the work, because if you don't use trail braking, you'll just be slower. The only drawback though is that there is a slight graininess in the force feedback. On an 8mm direct drive wheel, it's sharp and clear across the range, but that roughness lingers. Maybe it's the extra detail that is in the R-Factor 2 engine. It doesn't break immersion, as the feel remains there. This makes LMU so engaging, and it's what keeps me coming back for races against the AI, which is, they have a pretty good AI over there, or even in online. But on to the next game, and that is Assetto Corsa Competizione. Now, in Imola, I was able to put in a lap time of 1 minute 45.1, and in Spa, a 2 minute 21.6. A little bit faster. I do believe it is due to the BMW in that game being slightly faster than the one on Le Mans Ultimate. Now, the force feedback in ACC feels vague, lacking dynamic range. It conveys the basics, but misses on the nuance and the detail that gives an instinctive connection with the car. It can get difficult to balance on the limit of grip because it's hard to trust what you're feeling. It works, but without the depth like in LMU or the original AC. On the positive side, the car feels solid. With a stiff chassis and clear suspension feedback, you sense the weight transfer, the bumps, and the responses to inputs. Combined with the car's heavier feel, the driving model is believable, but hard to read because of the lack of detail, forcing you to rely on repetition rather than adapting to evolving conditions. That said, the transition between understeer and oversteer is fun, making the car inviting to drive. The audio, however, is a big highlight. I mean, it's obvious. Okay, LMU has great sounding audio, but the cars in ACC sound fantastic. With the throaty engine notes, the mechanical details, and the environmental noise, all of that adds a lot of atmosphere to the experience. One thing that really stood out though, after some comparison, is the way the grip falls off on this game. Both this sim and LMU feature a sharper and less forgiving drop-off once you exceed the limit, unlike AMS2, which tend to be more lenient, almost too forgiving at times. And that brings us to our next racing sim that we tested. But before I go to that point, I would just say that although the drop-off is almost just as sharp as LMU, there's still quite a bit of slip that you can play around with, even though the force feedback is quite vague. But on to Automobilista 2. In Imola, I was able to put in a lap time of 1:44.2. That is quite a bit quicker. In fact, I could have even gone quicker. And in Spa, I was able to put in a blistering lap time of 2:19.0. And this just shows the physics of AMS2. But at its core, the game is simply fun to drive. Most cars are a joy to throw around, with an emphasis on accessibility over realism. The tires always seem forgiving, whether cold or overheated, and the performance barely drops. They feel like soft rubber with an overly flexible sidewall, which makes the responses a bit delayed and kind of unnatural. That forgiveness also shows in cornering. At medium to low speeds, the rear is eager to rotate. Or maybe it's the front. The front is eager to just take you with it. And that happens whether you're under braking, acceleration, or even coasting. Oversteer though, it is easy to catch, but sometimes can appear suddenly. Now this playfulness keeps the driving very engaging, but it also makes the physics feel a little exaggerated. I don't think real cars on slicks are this quick to break loose. The force feedback though, mostly hits the mark. It's smooth and sharp, with enough detail to understand the car while remaining comfortable at pace. The downside is that the physics can mask the edge of grip. The cars always feel controllable, but it's so easy to exceed the limit without a clear sense of the fine line. And that's where the disconnect comes in. The game feels good, better than Forza Motorsport by a long shot, but it doesn't reach the same level of realism as the top simulators. Compared to Gran Turismo 7, it's in a similar range, but sometimes GT7 takes the lead. Another quirk appears on the braking, like I mentioned before. It's like the rear can feel nervous, almost detached, as if the suspension is too soft and lets the back lift. This contributes significantly to the oversteer sensation. But now, onto the main reason for this video. After getting comfortable with the BMW in these 3 games, we are now going to see which sim AC Evo closely matches. And in Imola, I was able to put in a lap time of 1 minute 44.7. Not that much slower than AMS2 and still quicker than the other 2 previous sims. And in Spa, I actually drove in Spa the day before I ran those tests, and I was able to put in a lap time of 2:19.0. Very close to AMS2 again. But when I did the test with 10 laps of fuel, default setup with some tweaks, with 5 laps, I was able to put in a lap time of 2:18.5. And that is crazy quick. And I felt like I could go even faster. There is something unusual about the way this particular car feels to drive in Evo. This car feels like a mix of 2 sims. The soft and pliable ride of Automobilista 2, combined with the grip and characteristics and the sharp drop-off of Assetto Corsa Competizione. The suspension adds a cushioned, flexible feel, but the tires are surprisingly grippy, making the driving feel a bit unusual. When the grip falls off though, the tires let go with a sharper edge. This is where the car punishes you if you get greedy with the throttle or the steering. However, in normal driving conditions, the sheer amount of grip available makes the car very user-friendly. It is engaging, but also feels a little disconnected from what you'd expect from this kind of car. The force feedback also feels dull, or seriously dampened. Turns out there actually has been a small hotfix addressing that, but it kind of broke one car. Some major cues like weight transfer, understeer, or rear slip are there, but the dynamic range and the subtle detail is still stuck in the original AC. This makes the car harder to read at the limit and reduces the immersion a little bit. It is possibly due to the very soft suspension of the GT3 that I noticed. The tires don't feel objectively wrong, but the compounds feel softer, providing more grip than expected, especially evident at Spa. It's not arcade-like though, and I will never say that. But despite that, Though you push too hard and the punishment is very real, sometimes maybe even harsher than in other simulations, this car also loves to rotate, and the TC makes little to no difference, as you can still rotate and spin the tires. And also, the ABS can just be abused to hell. Though it seems easy, it doesn't let you get away with sloppy driving for long. In short, the experience is strange, but not because it feels unrealistic, it's because it doesn't fully line up with my expectations. The car has the softness of AMS2, the grip curve of ACC, and a tire compound that feels more generous than it should. And the force feedback lacks the detail, and you're left with a driving experience that is friendly but yet punishing. It's still very accessible, but sometimes a little detached. It's not wrong, it just doesn't feel quite right. Oh well. This new update with an updated tire model is interesting. Since we can compare from other sim racing games out there, it really just shows how much more AC Evo has to go to make it to full release. The graphics are amazing, but now we need the physics and gameplay to follow. I would like to also point out that I also did a test in VR, which will be on another video, as well as comparing the Ferrari F1 2004 from the original AC, to this one, to see what the differences are. But again, Assetto Corsa Evo is not a bad sim, it's just different. They're all different, to be honest, but I hope it can be great once it's released.